3, 2, and 1.
Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and the host of the Go Collect Speculation video. In this episode, we are going to spend some time talking about 6 blog posts that have been sent in to Go Collect. This first blogger does something that I think is really cool. This second blog post is actually near and dear to my heart. So this next blog post is right up my alley. I want to play a game. The MCU has done some pretty interesting things, right? Folks over at Go Collect, it was all about more than meeting the eye. You could potentially get ahead of the curve, and we all know that Marvel is going to do something with Daredevil. While we are on this topic of Spider-Man, we have to acknowledge the elephant that is in the room, and the elephant is Miles Morales, a 3.5 sold. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another Go Collect weekly recap. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and we'll tune in next week.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences. I'm Jerry Milani, and if you love sports and you love pop art and you love movies and you love baseball, this is the place to be today. Yeah, tonight's the place to watch some baseball for the first time in a while, but this afternoon we'll give you a little bit of a pregame for you here with a really fun artist that I think you'll really enjoy seeing what his work is all about and learning a little bit more about what makes him tick inside and the program that he's a part of that's involved with baseball. I want to first go over a couple of things. First, don't forget, Go Collect, as you just saw. Their goal is very simple. They're an important sponsor of ours. We appreciate them helping support these programs. Their goal is simple. It's to make collecting better. So be sure to check them out at gocollect.com. If you are watching on Twitch or on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever of those three that you're tuning in today, go into the chat room. If you have some questions for our guest today, make sure to put those in there. We have our folks checking. We're going to pull as many of the good ones as we can and get to them in the next 30 or 35 minutes. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Go to wizardworldvirtual.com for the schedule of everything we have coming up over the next couple of weeks. Just a couple of quick things today. Earlier, we did the DC Stars, which was a great panel. Hope you enjoyed that. Marvel Stars takes over on a Saturday. We'll have some of the folks from the Marvel universe on with us. And then on Sunday, a triple header. We're going to have the You Create Comics coming up with Victor Dandridge, Wizard World's own Victor Dandridge. And followed by How to YouTube with Fandoms Anonymous, which has been at Wizard World shows before. And then Chilling Adventures of Sabrina caps the day on Sunday. And Bugs Bunny's 80th birthday, we'll be celebrating that on Monday. So you're going to have a great set of panels and just different parts of what you experienced at Wizard World shows. We're bringing them to you here at Wizard World Virtual Experiences. Again, go to wizardworldvirtual.com to learn more about everything we have going on these virtual experiences. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you a man who's based in Brighton, England, so coming all the way overseas today for us virtually. He specializes in poster designs, as you can see some of them behind me, such studios as Marvel, Amazon Studios, Lucasfilm, and more. He's done projects for ESPN, which we'll look at some of those later with the U.S. Open on the sports side. And he's one of 20 artists worldwide who have been commissioned by Topps, the baseball card company, to create or reimagine 20 classic baseball cards over the last 70 years. And each of these 20 artists is doing each of the 20 cards. And I think this artist is probably around number 7 or number 8, has another one coming out next week. Here is the great Matt Taylor.
Hey, did I do that right?
You did it right, Matt.
Hey,
how are you?
great.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Jerry.
Thanks for staying up late for us out there a few hours later than normal.
It's okay. It's only 9 o'clock here, so I'm just kind of easing into the evening.
Gotcha. Well, artists work all different hours anyway, don't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, like the majority of my clients are in the US, so I tend to work evenings most days anyway.
So if you want to follow along with us, matttaylor.co.uk is the place to check him out. So there's 3 T's right in the middle of there, matttaylor.co.uk, and you can see some. We're going to put a lot of things up here. We'll look at some baseball cards. We'll look at some other works, and we're going to talk about all of them. But, you know, Matt, these are good examples, I think, of your style of art. Talk about your style of art, how it developed, and what you try to get out of a piece when you create something.
I think, I mean, my styles just kind of developed quite naturally. I think over the years, I've been drawing for, I graduated nearly 20 years ago. So I've been working as a freelance illustrator on and off for like 19 years now. And where I am today is just kind of the point I'm at on my creative journey, if that makes sense. Like I drew a lot of inspiration early on from guys like Jamie Hewlett and Jim Lee and Paul Pope. And they were kind of like my early like artistic influences in terms of drawing. And so I used to do everything very kind of comic book style. So like heavy outlines with flat fill colors. I did that for a while and I felt it was really laborious and time consuming. So I decided I want to switch it up a little bit and started focusing on art that was a bit kind of bolder and was more about the sort of design aspects of a piece and kind of dropping out those sort of outlines. And I did that for a few years. And now I've sort of hit this middle ground where I'm sort of sitting between the kind of bolder work that I did for a few years and the kind of very comic book style stuff that I started out with. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. Yeah, it's difficult for me to describe my style other than it's just sort of what I do. Because I've been drawing for so long, I find it hard to describe what it is about my work that makes it unique, other than I guess I do it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's clear. And if anyone's following online and looks at, I could only put like 3 of the posters up here, but the idea of all the action and look, these are action films. I think for the Wizard World audience, these kinds of pieces that you do are right up our alley. This is exactly what Wizard World fans love. They love to see these alternate posters of these classic films and films that they love and new films. And first, how did you get involved with these studios? What was kind of the first ones you did, and who noticed you, and how does this happen for you?
Well, I was I think about 15 years ago, no, about 10 years ago, I won a design competition with Penguin Books to design a cover for an upcoming novel, and I was kind of over the moon about that, and it was a great thing to win, but I didn't really think much more about it. And a couple of years down the line, one of the art directors from Penguin had seen that internally and got in touch with me to design the backlist for John le Carré, the writer who wrote Spy Came In From the Cold and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. They were going to relaunch his kind of backlist of books, and so I was asked to do that, and that work was seen by Mitch Putnam at Mondo, who produced, 2 of the posters that you've got behind you at the moment, the Black Panther and the Captain Marvel. And they got in touch and they liked my work, and Mitch asked me if I wanted to take a swing at doing a poster, and he asked what films I like, and I picked out the Rian Johnson movie Brick, which is like still one of my all-time favorite movies. And I just kind of suggested it off the cuff, and Mitch said, yeah, have a go at that. So I did that, and that was kind of the beginning of my relationship with Mondo, who've really kind of put me, I mean, they're the ones I kind of credit with my kind of movie poster, pop culture related work, because through working with them, I mean, I've worked on the second poster I did for them was Star Trek. They did a whole bunch of posters themed around classic episodes. So I did one for Arena with Kirk versus the Gorn, which was an absolute blast to draw, because I just did this like comic panel layout of the 2 of them fighting, and I tried to make it dynamic because it's such a kind of weird, janky fight that they have in the show. Like the Gorn's obviously not very articulated, and so trying to make this very kind of static and stagey fight feel exciting was a real challenge. But then from there, like as I worked more with Mondo, they kind of trusted me to work on kind of bigger and bigger properties. And then in 2015, I think, they asked me to do Guardians of the Galaxy alternate poster, which is going to be put out at San Diego Comic-Con. That did well. And so they asked me if I want to do another one. I think my next one after that was Thor Ragnarok. And then from Ragnarok onwards, I've been doing posters to accompany most of the kind of big Marvel movie releases. So you got Black Panther and Captain Marvel behind you. I did posters for Endgame and Infinity War, which were a lot because there are a lot of people in those films, so you all got to get on the poster. I mean, I'm hoping to do Black Widow soon. But obviously, things being as they are, that's been put back. So that's kind of on the back burner at the moment.
And we hope there's some movies soon for you to be able to do posters.
Yeah. There's been a few like tentpole releases that I was planning on working on this summer, which obviously have been put back. And that's obviously impacting down the line, because I was thinking, okay, there's movies I was going to be working on in the autumn, but now I guess they're going to be put back to next summer or further. So yeah, in terms of my movie posts at the moment, I just did a piece for the Hulu movie Palm Springs.
I saw that one that one's prominent on your website also.
Yeah. Well, that one came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's not having the big kind of superhero blockbuster movies, which has become my kind of like stock in trade. It's been really nice to work on something that's like I mean, I say a small movie, it's still like the highest.
It might be a small movie, but it's getting more attention than it might have gotten had there been a normal situation.
Yeah, and it was a big Sundance hit, and so it wasn't a small movie, but like compared to the previous poster I did for them was probably Endgame, which was 40 characters and endless little elements that needs to be drawn. So just to draw two people like floating on a swimming pool was a dream.
Yeah. And you can see in your posters, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of, you just mentioned with the Gorn, trying to make that into an action thing and get that kind of on the poster. And I see you're translating that clearly into your cards. And I think the best example of that is the Tony Gwynn. How are you incorporating, again, you don't know how to kind of deem your style, but whatever that style is that's yours, how are you incorporating that into these cards so that all 20 are going to know right away that's a Matt Taylor?
Well, I hope that they'll look like a set purely because I've drawn them all. But I tend to go back to like certain color palettes and certain kind of design elements. I mean, you can see on the Gwyn and the Derek Jeter you've got in the background, they've both kind of got like a border around them, which isn't the same. But there are similarities between it. And there's things like I'll use the same shade of blue on each of the cards. And like the same shade of purple and the same shade of orange, but then I'll mix it up on each one. So obviously the Gwyn, you've got more kind of like teal and green going on in there, and the Jeter's pushed much more towards a kind of like blues and purples. But I feel like there's a kind of commonality of color that I use throughout all of my cards, so they'll feel like a cohesive set when they're put together. But I mean, the Topps cards have been really interesting for me because I'm not a huge baseball guy. I mean, I'm not a baseball guy at all. I went to my first baseball game last year. I went to see the Austin, the Round Rock Express minor league.
Yeah, the AAA team for
AAA
Houston
team.
Or Texas. I don't remember which one.
Yeah. So I went to see that, and that's my first experience of baseball. And like it was great. I had such fun. Mainly because I was kind of sitting with my girlfriend drinking beer and eating hot dogs. But also,
it's the best way to experience baseball when you've never seen it. But she knows the game, right? So she was explaining what the game is. So that's when you go with someone, and I'm a baseball fan. I'm wearing a Reggie Jackson from 1977. I'm a baseball fan since 1977. So when I go to a game with someone who has never seen a game or doesn't have much interest in, and I explain what needs to be explained, but I really just want them to have a good time. You don't want to overdo that, but you don't have to know baseball. And interesting to me, talking to almost all 20 of you artists at one point or another, whether for doing stuff with Topps or for these, is that there's a wide range of baseball and sports fandom among the artists. Some are diehard baseball fans, have their Reggie Jackson from 77, and some are, never saw a baseball game at all. And some are somewhere in between, where I think kind of feel you are. But I mean, you can look at that Jeter card and see, okay, the pinstripes are important. So you've incorporated the pinstripes. The Gwyn card is all these, it's Southern California. You've got everything kind of going there. And I think you're incorporating things that, how much did you try to learn about the players and learn about them to incorporate into the designs? Or did you just let the card take you where you wanted it to go?
It kind of depends. It varies from card to card. I mean, what I tried to do was look at them kind of blank, just look at them from a purely aesthetic level and try and work out what it was about each card that like really spoke to me, just purely visually, to almost act like a jumping off point for what I felt like the focal point should be. But then once I'd done that, then I started doing a bit of reading around the players and the teams. So obviously Cal Ripken there has got the Oriole wings around him, and the flowers are the Maryland state flower. So I wanted to try and incorporate a few elements which I felt could, I don't know, kind of suit the composition, but also there was a reason for being there. Like, I could have thrown any flower into that design, but it was important that it was one that was relevant to the location, really. And someone might look at that and just think, oh, that's a nice illustration. But I think for me, I need to know that there's a good reason behind all my design choices. The Frank Thomas, I was really taken with the I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it in like a non-graphic designery way. The kind of the halftone printing. So with all of these, Topps sent me like a high resolution scan of the card, which is what I have to work from. And the Frank Thomas card in particular is so misprinted. Like, you can see where the plates on the CMYK have kind of fallen out of registration. So you've got like, it's almost impossible to make out the details of his face. But I thought, okay, well, I'm going to lean into that, and I'm going to take the halftone and start using that for the background element, because it's kind of paying reference to the original card, but maybe not in so direct a way as saying, I'm doing this in the colors of the team, or I'm doing this as something that references him in particular. It was that like visual element on the card that kind of spoke to me for that one.
I think the cards as a set are interesting. Now, did you get to see all 20 of them before you started and say, okay, and then I know they give you the schedule of which ones, but did you look at the 20 and kind of get a general sense of what you're going to do? Or are you looking at one and then the other 19 are out of my focus, I'm just focusing on the one?
I mean, I think the week that I got the brief, in fact, even before Topps decided they wanted to go with me as one of the artists, my agent sent me over like the very, very initial briefing, and it had the 20 cards. I'm 90% sure it was exactly the cards that we ended up working on. So I had a look at them purely to see what I was working on, because obviously I'm aware of the existence of baseball cards, but not being a baseball fan, I have no frame of reference what they actually look like. So I just dove in and kind of just had a quick flick through them to see what it was I was going to be working with. Because it's a fairly unique project in that you're designing from something that already exists, and it is about your reinterpretation. Like, when I do a movie poster, I will have like some studio assets in terms of they'll send me photos of the cast and like maybe a type treatment that I might be able to use, but really it's about me interpreting that movie in a way that I want to communicate. But with these baseball cards, there's something real and tangible that already exists. And so like, there's been a couple of artists who've really kind of like broken free of that constraint. Old Man Allen's been doing the great kind of like total reinterpretations where he's got like his format and his design, but he's finding different photos to use. And I think Don C as well has been like really going like wild. But I didn't really have the confidence to do that, not being sort of as well versed in the players or the history. I didn't want to essentially get it wrong. So yeah, having that card there and saying, okay, you've got to stick to this, like at least a reasonable amount, otherwise people won't recognize what it is you're doing. And so I looked at them all just to get a gauge for like the breadth of the designs which are there. And I mean, there's a wide range of like time periods that are referenced in the cards, and like just visually that's really interesting, because you look at a card from the 80s and it's got very specific design sensibility to it because of the fonts and the colors that are used.
Example,
yeah,
it's a 1981 Ricky Henderson right here, and on the other side is a Jackie Robinson from the 1950s.
Yeah, 53 or 54, I think.
Yeah, it was in the early cards.
Yeah. And so for both of those, I decided to like lean into the decades essentially. So obviously with Ricky, you've got the kind of like neon trails flying out around the side, and then with Jackie, I love 1950s design. Like, I particularly love mid-century graphic design. And so it seemed like it seemed too good an opportunity to pass up to like throw that in there as the background design element. Although a lot of people have pointed out since it actually looks very Las Vegas, which is a completely fair comment to make.
Well, you know, in 1981, they can tell you whatever they want. That's still the 70s. I was alive in 1981. That's still kind of the 70s. We didn't really get to the 80s until about 1982. And then we were in the 1980s. You guys may not know that yet, but there it is. So we actually have some fans who have tuned in. Again, if you're on Twitch or Facebook, on YouTube, watching this live, go ahead in and put some questions in the chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can. A fan here, Eileen Burns, said she bought the Martin Anson Star Wars poster from Mondo just yesterday, but she felt like she was cheating because Matt's one of her favorite artists, and obviously that's not one of yours. But what do you know about that piece? Are you familiar with that piece?
It's amazing. It's so good. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, Martin's one of the absolute best poster artist that there is, and I mean, he did a live chat with Mondo last night, which I think is on their YouTube channel now, basically talking for like an hour about his process behind it. And like, I watched it because I just wanted to hear him talk about his process, because he's an incredible artist. He has such a great sense of typography and design. He said on his interview, like, he came up through a graphic design advertising background, which is why his type is so great. But like, I look at his posters as a kind of point of reference. Like, I want to make my posters look as good as he does. And when I had some work in a gallery show with him out in Austin a couple of years ago. And like, the first thing I did was I went over to his poster, because I've never actually seen any of his work like up close at full size. And I just wanted to look at it just to sort of figure out how he'd done it. And I couldn't, and it really frustrated me, because I was looking at this piece of art thinking, I don't know how you've drawn that. And I kind of want to know, because I want to do that. I've never actually met him. I hope our paths will cross at some point, so I can actually corner him and just say, how did you do that shading on that Black Panther poster?
Right. So what part of that is what you feel like you wouldn't be confident to do? Is there a technique involved, you think? Or what is it that he does that you feel like you can't quite tackle yet?
He has a really great sense of space in terms of design. Like, he designs these incredible kind of like grids and kind of frames, kind of like circles and like angles bisecting them. And then he drops elements into these bits of the frame in a way that feels completely natural, so that the image never feels lopsided and it never feels unbalanced, and it just feels like completely cohesive, whilst each element works entirely on its own, but as part of a whole. And then he just throws in these amazing type and title treatments, which, like, I do a little bit of type design here and there. I think my Cal Ripken is the only one that I've done like Jackie Robinson too. Like, I did more kind of intricate type designs for them, because I want to start trying that a bit more. But yeah, Martin's like he's way up here.
I mean, that amazes me to see the kind of work, not just on these cards, but on those posters from an artist of your talent, and that there's always another level, because you're accomplished to an nth degree, but there's still someone else that you look at and you're trying to achieve, even more and learn something new, which is to me what makes art tremendous, right? Just like a baseball player who's really good, but he's not quite Frank Thomas and he's not quite Cal Ripken, and he wants to be good enough. I mean, these are Hall of Famers right here. Most of the series are Hall of Fame players, so you get a sense of these are people at the top of their game, and the cards are an interesting mix, like you said. Some are posed, some are action, some are just the face, and you've got to work around all those. Rhonda Ann Smith Cook loves the Cal Ripken card, so she commented on that, and she also wants to know if doing the baseball cards in this whole series has made you want to learn more about the game besides your one trip to Round Rock.
Oh yeah, I mean,
maybe having a beer or whatever you had.
Yeah, I want to. I definitely want to go and see more games. What I enjoyed very much was the sort of communal experience of being there at the game. Like, aside from obviously, it's funny to say, I had a beer and a hot dog, and that was great, but it was a really lovely experience to sit there and watch this game happening. And the pace of it is very, is kind of sedate, and then like bursts of activity. And it's a really interesting thing to watch. And you can kind of be looking everywhere. You can be kind of looking over the bench, and then the action happening in the outfield. And there's always something new to be kind of keeping your attention, compared to like watching a soccer match, you're sort of basically watching the ball for 90 minutes. And it can be quite a tiring and intense experience when you support a team, just like focusing in on that. And there was something about the pace of the baseball game that I loved. I'm not sure if I'm quite at a point where I watch a game on TV, but I'd love to go to more games and experience them in person. Like, I feel like that's the way that I want to interact with baseball. Like, I want to go and see it being played.
Yeah, and obviously, with the way things are here right now, the games are starting tonight here in the States.
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
Tomorrow with the short 60-game season, but with no fans in the stands. So I guess Premier League in England, they're doing the same thing, right? No fans in the stands.
Yeah. The Premier League season's just wrapping up this week, and it's been empty stadiums, which is weird. It's not quite right.
And we're going to watch the game. There's been some exhibition games we've watched, and they're going to have the first game tonight. But my friends and I go to 20 games a year. We have season tickets, split a season ticket plan. It's going to be weird not going to a game and, like you said, that communal feeling. But I mean, the question is really good, is in that it's a sport that you weren't familiar with, but you understand. I think you're ahead of 80% of the people who go for the first time, seeing that there are things happening that are between the lines, that are not just, well, what was that pitch? Who's pitching it? There's the right fielder. Why is he moving there? And if you have somebody if you want to learn about it, there's going to be somebody sitting around you who's going to want to tell you. So that's the good part about it. Eileen Burns also chimes in that Tony Gwynn is her favorite player, but the Cal Ripken card is her favorite, which is neat. I really love the Gwynn card. The Ripken card I think is great too, but I don't have fandom either way on those. But so Charlie Conway asking, having designed exclusive posters for San Diego Comic-Con, have you been to the convention itself or other conventions, and what was the experience of being at a convention been like?
Yeah, I did San Diego Comic-Con for the first time 2 years ago, and I was out there because I designed the cover for the guide, basically the souvenir guide for the convention, which was just a dream project. But the guys at San Diego were kind enough to kind of fly me out and put me up for the duration of the con, and I had a few posters released through Mondo, so I got to experience it kind of as a guest. So I was on a couple of panels and doing a few signings and things, but also just as a fan, really, and just to be able to go and walk the convention floor and just see it all. And it was, it's overwhelming. There's too much there. I reckon I saw maybe a quarter of the booths, and even then, you walk through San Diego Convention Hall and you're just kind of like gazing to each side, and it's like, there's something interesting, and there's something else interesting, and you can't stop at everything, because you've been in there 2 hours and you think, well, I've walked like 10 yards, and I don't know, I can't remember how long the convention hall, but it's huge, and it's a real change to conventions. So I've done Thought Bubble, which is a convention in the UK, which is to my mind my favorite convention that I've done. It's not huge, but it's very art focused. The team who organize it are lovely, and it's a very chill experience compared to San Diego, which I want to go back. I was kind of hoping to go this year. Obviously, with everything that's happened, it became sort of apparent, kind of January, February, that it even though it took them quite a long time to announce that it wasn't going to be cancelled, which I know with all the conventions, it comes down to kind of legal things and insurance reasons why they have to leave it so long before it's cancelled. But it felt like pretty obvious from kind of March onwards that San Diego wasn't going to be happening. So I don't know, hopefully next year it'd be nice. I feel like conventions are kind of off this year. Hopefully in the spring next year there might be something starting up again.
Yeah, same thing with our Wizard World shows. We did 3 shows at the beginning of the year. Our last show was in March in Cleveland, and they were basically closing the state of Ohio down behind us as we left. They were basically the governor came out, and there were going to be no more events. So we're one of the last conventions to happen in the country, and we're one of the last things to happen in the state of Ohio. But question from Dylan O'Neill at Dylan O'Neill asks, given all these projects for the big budget studios that you've done, have you met anyone or experienced something that sticks out to you as an amazing moment? You gave us a little bit of a taste of what it was like. What was an amazing moment for you at any of these conventions?
I'm trying to think. San Diego was, I missed Michael Rooker by like that much, because
we got to connect you with him. He's our buddy. We love him.
I did a pin with his face on it for Mondo, and he came by the booth to pick them up, and I missed him completely, which was a real bummer. But no, I mean, as far as conventions, I mean, I get excited about like meeting my art heroes. I'm trying to think. My first thought bubble, I walked into the convention bar, and my buddy came to meet me, and he's friends with Fabio Moon and Gabriel Barr, and he was there with them, and he just kind of said, "Oh, I'm gonna get you a drink. Here's the twins. Speak to them." I was like, I don't know what to say. It was the year that Day Tripper had come out, and I was kind of blown away by that, and I didn't really have anything to say other than I love your work. I don't know how to start this conversation. It's been really nice, kind of getting to know a lot of the people whose art I really admire. In fact, I was talking to my girlfriend earlier. I was going through old comic books in a box, and I found a copy of the Killjoys comic book that Gerard Way and Becky Cloonan did. And I bought that when it came out because I love My Chemical Romance, and I love Becky's art. And now, like, I'm really happy to count Becky as a friend. And I did some work with Gerard on some of the Young Animal books. And it absolutely blows my mind that 6-7 years ago, I was just buying these books and thinking, this is great, I love this stuff. And now I seem to have found myself kind of like almost through the side door, like into this world of people who I still really admire, but now sort of my friends as well. It's a pretty privileged position to be in. Like I sort of count myself lucky every day that a lot of my art heroes now are kind of becoming my friends.
Which is neat. And you've been a part of some of these, big projects between ESPN and between these movie posters. And now, this Topps 2020 project has really kind of kicked off. And I have a question from the Carter N, who asks if the fervor around the 2020 project surprises you differently than some of your other work and how successful it's been. This project has really taken off. Some of the cards have been, flipped around, and people are really into these designs.
Yeah, there were a couple of weeks in, I think, May, when the project went bananas, and it was the day that Keith Shaw's, I can't remember which card it is.
It was the Griffey.
Yes, yeah.
The Griffey, yeah. Griffey and Mike Trout, yeah.
It sold like 100,000 copies. And, up until that point, we've been doing, between, I think mine was sitting comfortably around the kind of like 2,000 print runs, which is way more than I was anticipating when it started. And obviously, like Don C was kind of, not Don C, sorry, Ben Baller was kind of a case on his own because he's got such a huge following that he was always going to be able to tap into his fan base and, sell a certain amount. But I was super happy doing 2,000 cards, and then suddenly Keith just blows up and does 100,000. And I remember looking on, because you kind of do, like you track to see how your cards are selling. And my in fact, the one in the background, the Griffey card was selling for like $750 on eBay, which was too much, quite frankly. I mean,
there's always a correction when something like that happens. That's a secondary market that nobody, it's just like anything. It's like speculation. You can't control. All you control is your art, right? All you control is putting in something that people are going to want to pay some money for it. And look, somebody listed it for $750, whether they bought it for that or not. They're not going to do that if I scroll something. They're going to do it when it's professionally done, right?
Yeah, but it was pretty wild the way it blew up, and it's calmed down a little bit now. But I mean, it's still, we're still seeing print runs in the kind of between sort of 3,000 and 8,000 per card, which is a huge number. I mean, it'll probably end up being the most copies of anything of mine that's been printed, because the posters I do for Mondo are normally print runs in the kind of like 200 to 300s. I'm pretty sure there was one that was a timed edition which did like 4,000, and that blows my mind. But the fact that there are thousands and thousands of these baseball cards out there, and it does kind of affect the way that you approach the project a little bit, because there feels like there's a little bit more pressure, to do something incredibly good, because the volume of people looking at it has just kind of increased sort of exponentially. I mean, I'm curious to know whether actually the start of the baseball season is going to have an effect on it, whether because people are getting back to baseball now, is there going to be another spike of people kind of discovering this set? Who knows? Yeah.
And the fact I think about, I'd say 45%, almost halfway through the series. So you're on what? You're on number 8 now that's coming out on.
I've done.
You have the George Brett is coming out on
Yes.
Tuesday. It'll be your 8th, maybe, that's come out. I know you did the Clemente one. I misplaced. I know I saved it, but I don't have the Clemente one up. But so you've done 7 or 8. What's the special challenge with taking a piece of art that's already a piece of art?
Mm-hmm.
So these cards, some of them are really well known, some of them less well known, maybe as a card, even though the players are well known. How do you take this Griffey card that's really well known and make it something that's yours, but still has the essence of what it is?
It's really hard. It's a really interesting challenge. And to be honest, that's what drew me to the project in the first place. Because, you know, when you get it as an artist, when you get a brief in, like your first instinct is to look at the budget and see if it, you know, it's financially worthwhile to do it. But your second instinct is to kind of figure out, you know, is this going to be fun? And honestly, like reinterpreting work like this is not something I've ever done before. And I think for me, it was a case of stripping the card down to its kind of bare bones elements and then kind of rebuilding it from the ground up. So with every card, it's all about, actually, I say with the one exception of the Tony Gwynn, where I went a little bit crazy with the kind of decorative elements. With every card, it's about the image of the player and working out how to make that the centerpiece and then sort of designing around it. And because you're working from a card that already has borders and frames and colors, it kind of suggests things to you. I mean, with the Derek Jeter, you know, it's the kind of baseball diamond shape in the background, which is on the original card, but on the original card, it's kind of tilted at a kind of 3/4 angle. So, and I didn't really want to do a 3/4 angle. So I thought, okay, well, I can kind of flatten that out. And then as soon as I flattened it out, I realized, oh, this has become a framing device. And so then I started building the rest of the design out from there. And obviously with Jeter, it was about like the pinstripes, and it's New York. And when I think of New York, I think of the Empire State Building and that like incredible deco foyer. And so that's all the things which were kind of going through my head while I was designing that card. And like you said with Gwyn, you know, it's that Southern California, like Mexican border. I mean, San Diego's a city that has, I mean, it's right on the border. So there is a lot of kind of Mexican design and influence that you see in the city. So I wanted to pay tribute to that. And then it kind of got away from me a little bit. Like it started out as these kind of very traditional Mexican elements. And then I just essentially just carried on drawing until it got to a point where I thought I kind of had to stop now. Because I could have taken those flowers. Sorry, I realize I'm looking at myself talking. I'm actually pointing at the screen because I'm pointing at
what we get. I'll point here. Like,
yeah, I'm pointing at that one just there.
And I'm pointing with the wrong hand.
Yeah, there we go.
We're all getting used to Zoom. Yeah.
But yeah, so I just I could have kept on going. And at a certain point I had to go, no, you know what, you got to stop here. So with each card, it's a unique challenge every time. And like having 20 of them to do is kind of a blessing, because it means each time I get to try something different, because each card is from a different year and is a different player and has a different set of things around it. And so each time I get to do it, I get to start afresh. And the fact the project is ongoing over the course of, it's going to be kind of 8 or 9 months by the time it wraps up. You know, at the start of every month, Top send me my assignments for the month. So, you know, I've got George Brett and I'm doing Ichiro Net after him. And I forget who I'm doing next after that. But like, they're always spaced like 2 or 3 weeks apart. And I think if I'd done all 20 cards at once and just sat down and done all of them in one go, they would probably feel quite samey and quite boring and probably quite safe, because I would have been treating it as one large piece. But because they are spread out every couple of weeks, it means that I do a card and then I go and do my other illustration jobs. Sure. And then I come back to it and I can almost treat each card as like a new job. And every time I start a new one, I have a look back through the ones I've done already, just to kind of like get them fresh in my mind, to make sure I'm not diverging too far, because I know there are people who are collecting all of my cards. And so I want them to feel consistent enough so that if those people want to display them, they're not going to have something that looks a mess. When a couple of years back, Mondo asked me to do a Back to the Future poster, and I did one, and I was really happy with it. I didn't think anything about doing parts 2 and 3. And I sent it in, and that was the end of it. And then a year later, they said, do you want to do Back to the Future Part 2? And I caught myself like, I don't know how to replicate what I've done with Part 1 for Part 2. So I did it completely differently, did different formats, different palette. And then a year later, they asked me to do Part 3, and I did the same again. And like, I've had a couple of messages from people who own all 3 of them, and there is no way to display all 3 of them next to each other. Like one's 18 by 24, one of them's like 18 by 36, the other one's 36 by 18 portrait. So
it would be a weird frame to try to put them all in.
Yeah, because back then I was thinking no one's going to be crazy enough to buy like 3 of my posters and put them on the wall next to each other. But with the Topps cards, like I know there are people who are going to want to collect the whole set, so I have to have that in mind, that I don't want to do something that looks totally jarring, because I don't know, it would annoy me if I was collecting an artist's work and there was one bit that was wildly different.
We have time for one more question, just getting back to what you were talking about some of your other projects and some of those big studios and big things. Abby Seeger at Abby Seeger 123 would like to know if there's a property, whether it's movies, sports, music, that would be a dream project for you.
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. That's the one. That's the dream, and I've not subtly mentioned it to people.
So have you thought about how you'd attack that? How would you make that be you? How would you take your style and turn it into that?
You know what? Probably something akin to the Tony Gwynn card behind you. Like I'm feeling that kind of vibe. I mean, I know it's kind of set in a kind of fictional, like I can't remember if it's South California or Florida, but certainly those kind of floral elements. There's lots of Catholic iconography in it. Like it's a beautiful, beautiful film. There's so much to draw from that I think I'd probably. I try not to think about it too much because I'll get hung up on it and the fact that I can't do it. So I just kind of have it in the back of my head that one day, fingers crossed, I'll get to do it. And at that point, I will sit down, I will watch the movie, and I will sketch what comes to mind and hope that it works. But also, like, if I ever got that brief, I would be terrified because it's just about my favorite film, and I'd be absolutely petrified of messing it up.
He's one of 20 artists across the world. And when we say across the world, he's in the UK, we have Australia, we have France, we have some other countries covered, but one of 20 across the world has been commissioned by Topps to do each of 20 of these iconic baseball cards. And the ones that have come out so far have been terrific. And Matt, we appreciate you taking time today to talk about your work and your career. And we look forward to the George Brett on Tuesday and to the rest of the ones coming out over the rest of the period.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't get George Brett finished enough for you to do a sneak peek of it tonight, but it's still on the drawing board, unfortunately.
I'm going to see it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we appreciate everyone joining us today on Wizard World Virtual Experience.